Hi, I'm Merrill Williams. I'm talking about NAAGS. NAAGS is the National Association of Attorney Generals, and they apparently have been the authors and developers and the hold the divine rights to the manifestations of the master settlement agreement. I suppose, in a way, that this is a revelation to me because I just ignored it and never really thought about this in terms of my own history and why I would ever want to delve into it. Because after a certain point, you feel like you're alone, and so maybe that's the way it should be. And I, and yet I feel very compelled to go back and give a chance to review everything that happened, because I had a great deal of responsibility in myself at the time, and I ignored most of the things, and I'm sorry that I did. But I don't know if I could have done anything in any way other than just completely dissolve all of what I intended to be goodwill and to be of some use to what we have in terms of our society. And today, when I look at what has happened, and today, after almost 14 years of what's called a Tobacco Master Settlement Agreement, I just simply have to say that I don't want this. I don't want this on my shoulders in terms of the thought for the future of my children's children and their children and the rest of the world. There is a concept here in the NAAGS, the National Association of Attorneys General, which seems to imply that they have forever, or in perpetuity, a connection with the taxing system of tobacco and the use of tobacco, and how things are going to go in terms of what they did to make this settlement through a band of lawyers who for many years have been perhaps disingenuous about what what the reality of their value was. Many lawyers knew nothing about what they were taking on. Many lawyers just assumed that what Mike Moore passed down to them and Christine Grigor passed down to them, and in their firms, because they were big shots and the attorney generals were part of this, that they could get by with whatever was passed on. What I am looking at is truly for the first time. I've never really thought about what we truly gained, lost in terms of the killers, the people, and it is that you're while I've been watching the thoughtful people talk about the spills in the Gulf, and the fact that we need clean energy, the fact that we're destroying nature, we've been destroying nature, all of these cliches, which are really part of our lives, the financial meltdowns, the concepts of reality that we have. We are destroying nature, but bit by bit, why did this become part of people's desire to make to create a settlement for something that is an obvious killing agent? Not only in what I've talked about, and if you look at what I've tried to talk about in terms of the Scotland issue and the 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 business of the ozone layer, the freon, I think that Legionnaire's disease was a cause that is partly developed through tobacco technology and technology that had been developed for a use in tobacco, and yet the most lethal objective here is to sort of skin everything out of what would be rage in terms of how you would feel about something so marginalized as people and the use of tobacco. And for that, I look and turn to the body of this is essentially the holders and the collections, the mandated collections, what was established by the people who were in control. How this was settled in 97, 98, and how this ends up in our lives today. Essentially, it's apparent to me that the control is probably bifurcated in many ways, to the extent that there is when the last time I had anything of relevance to add to this, unfortunately, I regret that is now part of what is called the legacy tradition of documentation, of holding documents in their library. Some of these are obviously pieces and bits and pieces of what is part of the settlement, but this is truly a milestone, or maybe a complete idiocy of someone's imagination, when in fact it's probably more along the lines of what came out of what I did, what I participated in 1994. With the wrong people, and to that extent, I would have to say, there was an opportunity to look at, and I'm ashamed to have had something to do with this. And what we have in the Master Settlement Agreement, or the MSA, which was signed by the Attorney General of 46 states, plus Mississippi and Minnesota, Florida, Texas, is an agreement with tobacco companies, and essentially what the product of this is 14 years later is that you produce some jobs for some people who are out there working in adjunct positions of tobacco. It's pretense. It's not real. If you thought about how avid the complaints were before 1994, how much has been released and how many things have been accomplished. This was not a war. This was a truce, which has no interest. It's not like the Versailles Treaty, which left Germany in such a position of impaling their entire civilization, which it should have been. They should have taken a position of gutting the tobacco industry if they really were doing anything. But unfortunately, when I read the idea of what they won, and I see that part of this is sheer idiocy. There's nothing here. there's nothing but a cataloging of a system of well, it's not completely fair to say that it's simply a cataloging of a library. It's also the participation of what might be, if you had a reasonable cost to do it, to look into some of their flimsy documentation that does exist, even though there's 13 million pieces or more. It has no variation in terms of what was produced through the Brown and Williamson documents, because they all overlapped, or through Minnesota, which went on its own way and went over to Great Britain. And one of the interesting statements is that, oh, yeah, BAT participated, BAT being probably the biggest company in the world. But if you want to see anything that they have in terms of documentation, go to Guildford, England, and have a little bit of a treat to spend your life over there, running through their documents. I don't see what you did. The NAAGS, the MSA, the people, what was the challenge? The challenge was to rid yourself of a disease. The ladies, the men, the people who smoke. I hope my generation, the generation of children who are coming into this world, don't have, and mostly you're talking about poor people. If you go to certain parts of the country, other countries, there may not even be any real emphasis on trying to kill people. In this country, we're trying to kill people, and we're canonizing it. And the whole purpose of canonizing it is just simply to make a profit. And the profit has gone to the wrong people with greed and avarice. And these are all things that are temporary. 30, 40, 50 years from now, they're not going to have any value. That's what the whole purpose is. But let me just run down here that these are the things that were actually agreed to and have been a part of the participating agreement. It's not the Versailles Treaty. Here's the purpose: to recover health costs. Okay, I remember reading something along those lines. I thought that was really what it is. But after 13, 14 years that have gone by, I don't think you've really done anything in terms of what you might have done. I don't know if you would have ever done anything. But there are other things. You're exempting things that are obviously intended for the people in tobacco. And one of the exemptions was a treaty, so to speak, exchanging one thing for another, which is stupid. I mean, the idea of marketing, it's useless. Of course, if you've got an addictive product, you don't need to market it. You really don't. And that's perfectly clear. And yet, that was part of the agreement, along with recovering health care costs. This has not happened, but that was what was the purpose. One of the purposes was to give some kind of exemption to tobacco, and that they got, and to continually pay state funds, tax deductible, incidentally, and then to go further into this, there was a silly concept of continuing what had already gone on for years and years in various quarters, the American Legacy Foundation and what is called the Truth. I'm not really sure if that is the truth. And on that note, I have to say there are some other aspects of the combination of what is constituted as the Tobacco Settlement Agreement and the NAAGS, the Association of Attorney Generals, who hold the key to everything. Sort of like a shook hearty bacon in the other side. But nothing has happened. and I don't think anything will. And I'm going to continue this in the next section, so I'll call this part 1.